Hey, everybody, this is Mike Miller, and welcome to the Strike Up the Band podcast. Today on the show, we have one of the giants in the brass banding world. We've got Philip Harper, who is a prolific composer, conductor, and music director of the Cory Band, which is generally recognized as the number one rated brass band on the entire planet. So you can't get much better than that. Philip, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a great pleasure, Mike.
Uh, I had the chance to see Cory Band when you guys were in Raleigh 3 or 4 years ago, and I had honestly, that's the first time I'd ever really seen a top-notch brass band, and I was in the third row, and I was just like, "Wow, this is just amazing." So, if you'd tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up at Cory, and just you know,
And one day ended up at the May Mandy Hall in Raleigh. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm enjoying myself as the musical director of Cory Band now. I've been there 10 years. This is my 11th year. But if you want me to go kind of right back to the beginning with me, it's actually quite a surprise that I've ended up kind of where I have with the Cory Band, really, considering that I don't come from a musical family. There's no heritage of brass bands specifically, or even music in general, really, in my immediate kind of predecessors. So I just took advantage of the kind of network of community brass bands that we have right across the UK here. When I was very young, my mum sent me along to the local band, and they thrust an instrument into my hands, which happened to be a tenor horn, and said, "Blow in this end," the sound comes out this end, and that's how it all started with me, really. I guess there was kind of something inherent which kind of led me along the path I've ended up traveling. Definitely kind of passionate about music, but I think for the brass band in general, it's the kind of it's the sound and the feelings that sound kind of invokes within me that I think is a real appeal, which is why I guess I ended up going down this path. And I went through university and studied music and studied composition a bit at university. Lived a couple of years over in Japan on the other side of the world. That was interesting. And then came back and started building up as a conductor and a composer, really. So that brings us up to today.
I guess that would be the condensed version, anyway. So you mentioned starting off with a local brass band. I'm curious, as an American who grew up in the American school system and music education system. We're used to musical training going through the schools. In Britain, is it generally outside of the schools, or do they do musical training in the schools there as well?
Yeah, they do. I mean, most schools have an orchestra or a wind band or a brass band or whatever, and you can take individual lessons. More and more popular is becoming the sort of whole class instrumental tuition. But when I was growing up, there was no such thing as that. And I know you've got your band program there in the USA where, playing in the band is on the curriculum, and we don't have anything like that at all. But what we do have, like I say, because of, historical reasons, I guess, and the sort of birth of industry around the sort of 18th and 19th century, we do have in the communities lots and lots, hundreds, maybe thousands, nobody really knows how many, but we do have these lots and lots of these community bands, which will basically, if you walk in through the door just like I did, they will give you an instrument for nothing. They'll teach you for nothing. They'll give you the experience of playing in the band for nothing. There's just a whole kind of web and a whole network of volunteers in the community that are, like me, are kind of passionate about it. And that is a real source of kind of young players beginning in the world of brass in the communities rather than in the schools.
So I know there are a lot of youth brass bands around.
Yeah, well, that's one good example. I mean, the band that I played with, called the Castle Point Brass Band, which was over in southeast England, which is nowhere near like the industrial heartland of brass bands. But it was a thriving band and had about 4 or 5 different bands from what I can remember, ranging right from beginners band, which was obviously the first band I went into, through to an intermediate band and then a full youth band. And then above that, they had 2 bands, I think, with adults in as well. So the whole kind of pipeline system was there in that community band.
Okay, and just for the USA listeners who may or may not be familiar with the whole brass band concept, explain the way the instruments are pitched and everything. I understand everything's in either B flat or E flat, and everything's in treble clef except for the bass trombone, right?
That pretty much sums it up. Yeah. So if you're if
Okay.
you're a normal musician and you come across a brass band, you take one look at it and you usually run a mile because you, as you said, you need to kind of transpose every instrument, and also when you've got instruments like tubas written in treble clef as well, it's a bit of a mind bender. But yeah, I mean, I think again, I talked briefly about the historical roots of brass bands just a minute ago, and I think the fact that at their birth, brass bands in this country were kind of a musical outlet for the manual workers, the number of which were proliferating all the time back in the mid 19th century. And they used to work hard in the factories or in the mills or, whatever else they were doing. And their employers basically kind of set up these bands to give them an outlet, a kind of a leisurely pursuit, if you like. But by virtue of the fact that it was for these manual workers, it tended all to be men, and it tended also to be not highly educated men as well. And that's why I believe that most of the instruments are written in treble clef. So you could have basically a room full of basically no more than lay people, give them all an instrument, teach them to read music from scratch. So teach them all to treble clef, and there's no problems with teaching complicated concepts like bass clef or tenor clef or what have you. And just get the bands kind of playing and blowing as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And I think that explains the treble clef thing. In terms of the instruments, I mean, brass instruments went through huge developments there at the beginning of the 19th century, as I'm sure I don't need to tell you. Most importantly of all, the development of the valve, which was in about 1814 or 15, I think, something like that. And of course, this was a huge technological advancement for brass instruments and led to lots and lots of innovation in that area. And you've probably heard of the great Belgian innovator and inventor, if you like, Adolf Sax.
Certainly.
Of course, he gave his name to the saxophone, which is a family of instruments pitched in E flat and B flat, as most of your listeners will know. Well, your listeners may not know that he actually did invent a whole other family of instruments as well, called the sax horns. So these kind of go alongside the saxophones, which are reed instruments. The sax horns are brass mouthpiece instruments, and that's the group of instruments that the brass band is based on. So similarly to the saxophones, we're pitched in E flat and B flat, like you say, and we have alto flavors and tenor flavors and baritone flavors of these sax horns. And that's really the intention was to create a round and mellowed kind of sound, which you can hear still the brass bands of today producing that kind of blended, cohesive sound.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about Cory. Just looking at the website, it looks like the band goes back to 1884.
Yeah, that's right. Before my time, but that's when it all started. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and the specific story of the band is, one example of the story that I've just told, the general story about how bands grew up in the UK. I mean, the Cory Band is in the South Wales Valleys, which, contrary to the area of the UK that I grew up in, is absolutely brass band heartland. So there's a lot of coal under South Wales, and all of that was exploited through a series of mines which sprung up and were just like hugely commercially successful through the 19th century. The Cory Band actually got its name from one of the mine owners, Sir Clifford Cory. And the name Cory is a really big name in Welsh mining history. And several of the Cory brothers and different generations of the family were at various points owners of a lot a lot of the mining activity in South Wales. So that's where the name Cory Band came from. It actually started life in 1884 as a temperance band. And I'm sure you know the significance of that. It basically means, again, it was a band that was set up as a leisure activity for the men of the factories, and something they could go along to in the evening, and keeping them out of the pubs. So the temperance part meaning no alcohol, no drinking, no liquor, no beer, just go and play in the band. That's what you did with your time. So when Cory Band first began, it was called the Ton Temperance Band. Ton is the little village where the band's from, and they enjoyed playing together, and got quite good in the early years. And then they were heard by Sir Clifford Cory at one community event they were playing in, and he approached the band and said, he said, well, I like what you guys are doing. Is there any way I can help you at all? And they replied, well, we would really like some professional music direction so that we can, move our playing quality onto the next level. And he said, yeah, okay, fine. I'll pay for that. And sort of part of the deal was the band changed its name to the Cory Band, and that's what it's been through various iterations over the years. The Cory Workman's Band at one point, it had a few sponsors, so we've had the Buy As You View Cory Band as well, all sorts of things. But here we are in the 21st century, and once again the band is just called the Cory Band, and that's why.
Has Cory always been one of the top bands in the UK and on the planet, or when did they start achieving that superior level that we know of them as now?
Yeah, no, it hasn't. It has not been. No, I mean, the banding tradition in South Wales has always been strong, and Cory has always kind of been there or thereabouts on the Welsh scene. But I think we have to wait till 1974. So 90 years after its foundation, which was the first time it won a UK national title. So it won the national finals in 1974. Then it won the European title, which is the biggest one of all, for the first time in 1980. And then it won a nationals hat trick through the mid 80s. It went through some real bad times in the 1990s, actually. So it started falling down the rankings, and everything was going wrong for the band in the 90s. At one point or another, there was a terrible fire in the band room, and lots of the library and the memorabilia was lost. But then fortunes really changed kind of in the early 2000s, particularly when the band became sponsored by Just Rentals, which became Buy As You View, and Bob Childs became the musical director. And then it started really being prolific in the winner's circle. So as you can see from some of those dates I've thrown out there, the answer to your question is no, it hasn't always been right at the pinnacle. But for the last kind of 20 years or so, it really kind of has been. So an upward trajectory, if you like.
So why don't you tell us about the whole contesting scene in the brass band in the UK? I think that's something that people would be interested to know about.
Right. Well, this is serious stuff, Mike. You've asked about here. I mean, this is the real deal. I mean, all of the band's people in the UK are just kind of amateurs. They're hobbyists, so they all play in the band as part of their hobby, and they have a day job. But certainly, as far as Cory Band's concerned, taking part in a contest is something which, for the people in our band anyway, is somewhat akin to a religion, and they will devote hours, days, weeks of their lives every year. We do 5 contests a year generally, so they do it 5 times a year, where they'll go to they won't neglect their jobs or their families. Well, maybe they will a little bit, but the focus of their whole lives for the 2 or 3 weeks before the contest is to, as a human being, to push themselves as far as they can go, achieve things they've never achieved before in terms of performance, and just experience that kind of rush of playing an intense performance, because most contest performances are no more than about 15 minutes. So you'll prepare for hours and hours and weeks, and then you'll be on stage. There'll be intense pressure for 15 minutes, particularly with a band like Cory, where, you know, everyone expects a great performance and expects the band to win every contest. So the pressure is huge, but the players really thrive on it. Like I say, they put themselves through it 5 times a year. The buzz which can come from this activity is just immense. And I would usually kind of liken it to something like skydiving, which, you know, might be another type of hobby where you chuck yourself out of an aeroplane from somewhere above the earth. It's that sort of thing. Now, the format of the contests generally doesn't vary. It's about 20 bands. There is a test piece which is chosen some months beforehand. It's designed to be as difficult as possible, so adding to this pressure that I've talked about. And it's judged on the day blind. So the 20 bands play the piece one after the other, 20 performances of the same piece. And there are usually 3 judges, and they are sitting in an enclosed box a little away from the stage. They can hear every performance perfectly, but they can't see it. So they don't know which band is playing. And that is how it's judged. To someone coming in from the outside, I mean, if an alien came down from Mars and walked into a brass band contest and I had to explain to it what was going on, I would struggle. It's definitely a unique and kind of very idiosyncratic pastime. But nevertheless, that gives you a little flavor of what it's all about.
I've listened to some of those test pieces on YouTube and so forth, and it seems like some of them were written just for the purpose of being as hard as possible.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, the clues in the title, a test piece, and you know, it's always the subject of some controversy, really, as to whether, you know, music should exist to be, you know, its raison d'etre is to be as difficult as possible. I mean, it's hardly an artistic aim, really, is it? But you know, I would say, in terms of my experience, a contest is kind of partially about art and also partially about sport. And when you start bringing sport, you know, musical sport into it, then you think of the Olympic motto: higher, faster, stronger. And then you start to get an understanding as to why composers are asked to, you know, put more notes in than ever, and, you know, more extreme ranges than ever. You know, that, like I say, that's a debate that we have in this country, as well as I'm sure across the world, which is what, you know, is there really a place for a musical competition? But you know, at Cory, we think there is.
Obviously, you've done quite well at them, and you've written a number of those test pieces yourself, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. But I mean, the other thing I should say is that in the UK and certainly across Europe as well, there are different divisions of bands. So we would liken this to, in this country, the Football League, or soccer for you. We have you know, we have your Manchester United and your Chelsea and your Arsenal and Liverpool in the top division, but there's 3 or 4 divisions under that. And it's the same in the world of brass bands. So in terms of the music I've written, I have written some top level test pieces which are designed, you know, partly to give a good kind of emotional experience, but also partly to be as difficult as possible. And then I've written pieces for those lower sections as well, which are not designed to be as difficult as possible by their nature. You know, the players in the lower divisions, just the players are not as good, so they can't deal with as much technically. And so yeah, I've written a wide variety of pieces for bands across all the sections.
Okay. Yeah, we're just in the very beginning stages of starting a brass band here in Spartanburg. Like, we've had one practice. And I was talking to the director. I said, you know, Philip Harper's written some good stuff. And he said, you know, you listen to that music and it sounds like it might not be that hard, but then you look at it and it's like, whoa.
Well,
So,
I mean, there we are. If you look at my back catalogue, I'm sure there's something to suit. I mean, how did it sound, that first rehearsal?
oh, it was actually quite good. We had, you know, mostly folks in there that were music educators and freelance players and so forth. So yeah, I think for a first rehearsal, we did pretty good.
And did you have a full contingent? I mean, did you have your B flat basses and all that as
uh,
well?
mm, We had six tubas. We did, I know the British basses are pitched in E flat and B flat.
That's
Ours
right.
were all just probably either B flat or C. And
Yeah.
we we just had some French horns. We didn't have anybody on tenor horn quite yet, but
Small
otherwise,
steps at first, and I think this is the reason why the brass band has really been so popular in the UK, and it has been an export from the UK certainly across to Europe, and I know across to the States as well. But it's very, very simple, just to get a room full of people together with a bunch of instruments, just rock up and start playing. Basically, there's yeah, and of course, young and old, and all kinds of backgrounds can just join in this kind of one activity, which is a definite force for good, bringing people together, which I'm sure is something that you felt in your rehearsal. And we feel that every time we get together at Cory Band, and I'm sure every other brass band, certainly across the UK, across the world, will feel that kind of sense of camaraderie and coming together. And it's so simple to do with the brass band. It really is.
yeah. So let's talk about some of the folks you have in your band. When you listen and see these guys, it's hard to think of them as amateur musicians, especially like Tom Hutchinson and
Yeah.
a few others. Do a lot of these folks work in music outside of the brass band, or most of them have real regular jobs? Or
Yeah, I mean, Tom does a lot with his cornet. I mean, and who wouldn't? I mean, he's got to be the best cornet player in the world. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but that's definitely my view. But alongside that, he works for a bank as well, and earns some of his crust doing that. And as I say, at most of the concerts that the Cory Band do, near the end of the concert, people do think that they've been listening to a professional ensemble for the whole of the concert. It's the level is that high, but everyone in the band has a job outside of what they do in the band. So we've got all sorts. We have some students in the band who are studying a music degree, but we have a fair number of teachers in the band as well, and not just music teachers, but teachers of a variety of different subjects. And any job under the sun you could mention, and there's probably someone been through the ranks of Cory Band who's done that job. In fact, one of the things we were proud of last year, just before the late Queen Elizabeth II passed away, we were the recipient of a special award, the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. And this was presented to the Cory Band simply on the fact that all of the players, as well as doing their day jobs and having their families and, all the rest of that, they devote so much of their lives to the cause of playing with the Cory Band, going all around the world, performing concerts and what have you, doing all of the personal practice in their own free time. And so to be recognized in this way, I think really does kind of pay testament. But what it does kind of show to the world really that this is how brass bands are organized, even at the top level, right across the UK. It's an amateur pursuit, but with professional, and I would dare to say, in some cases, even better than professional outcomes in some cases.
for sure. So how often do you guys rehearse? I think is it twice a week? I saw on your website.
Twice a week, yeah. We do Mondays and Thursday nights, sometimes more often if we need to. Like if we're in a contest week, we'll generally come together every night.
Is it year round, or do you take any time off at any point in the year?
We do take time off. Yeah, we don't rehearse over the summer. We have some time off at Christmas and other places where we can just put a bit of an escape valve in the schedule. I mean, as you can imagine, if you're in the band and it's your hobby, and it's too intense, then it just becomes overbearing. So we do try and have some weeks off where we can.
Yeah, and I saw you guys just got back from Korea.
That's right. Yeah.
How did that trip come about?
Well, it's something that we've been looking to do for a few years now. It was planned for 2020, which of course turned out to be the year that all plans were cancelled. And in South Korea, they seem to have a completely different strategy to coming out of COVID. Certainly a different strategy to China and Japan than near neighbours. And so we were actually also planning on doing the trip in 2021, which was sort of when some people were in a COVID and some people were out of COVID. But anyway, it didn't happen then. So we finally did get to do the trip yeah, this last year. So it was a long time in the making, a long time in the planning, but the band did 6 concerts out there. 4 of them on the island of Jeju as part of the Jeju International Wind Festival. And then we went back to Seoul, to the capital, and did a couple of concerts in Seoul to finish off before we flew home again.
Is brass banding the thing that's becoming popular in Korea?
Well, the people,
Uh,
I mean, the Jeju Festival is a wind band festival, really. So it
okay.
wasn't so much kind of brass oriented, and they've got, like you have in the States, they've got more wind bands than brass bands over in the Far East. So we were happy to, join that festival and spread the word that British style brass bands are something really good. And then the people that we worked with in Seoul, the concert promoters, worked with a band called the Artenium Brass Band, which is a new band which has been set up in South Korea because basically got a group of people there who, like me, are just really passionate about that particular sound and that particular flavor of banding. The fact that everyone can come together so quickly and just set up a band and do it. So yeah, we were part of kind of helping them start to spread the word of this style of banding in Korea. I think it's early days for them.
Okay. Yeah, I spent a year in Korea way back when I was in the army, back in the 80s. So I'm sure.
Okay, right. Well, yeah, like I said, I spent 2 years living in Japan, and in fact, I'd never been to Korea, but I have been to Japan a lot, including those 2 years that I lived there. So yeah, it's quite interesting to see the differences in culture between Japan and Korea. You'd imagine that it's all kind of the same, but I mean, there's lots of similarities, but there's also a lot of differences. I mean, the food being the probably one of the most noticeable, so different, Japanese food and Korean food. Amazing.
The Koreans like it hot for sure.
They do, yeah, they do like it hot for sure.
Yeah. Well, you were mentioning the 2020, and you guys during the COVID period, I mean, you guys put out some really cool videos. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came together?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're lucky in the band that we've got a guy who plays on percussion, Ali Woodman, and he's got a normal day job. He's a civil servant, but he's very, very skilled in video editing, or he's become even more skilled in video editing since 2020. But he was, he did all of that for us as soon as the COVID thing kind of broke. I was on my way to band practice actually, and I can remember it vividly. I had my shoes on and I was thinking something weird is going on. And I had my shoes on, ready to go to band practice, and then our prime minister came onto the television and basically said, "Right, look, there's an emergency. We're shutting the whole country down. No one go out anywhere until further notice." And it was like, "Oh wow, this is serious." But anyway, so the day after that, the day after we should have had band practice and we didn't, I was speaking to Ali and I was saying, "Well, what can we do? How can we keep everyone kind of involved? How can we keep the band players involved? How can we keep our audiences involved?" And we came up with this idea of doing these kind of, pieced together videos where everyone played in their own home, sent Ali their videos, and he edited it all together. Yeah, we came out quick on that one, and we released one within about a week, I think, which was, looking back on it now, it's pretty elementary and pretty kind of unsophisticated, really, but that's where it started. We ended up doing, I think we did 14 or 15 of them in the end, which were band performances. But, we went further than that, and we organized international brass band competitions online. We did some education days online. We basically moved ourselves online, really. To be honest, I think that's one of the reasons why the band was awarded the Queen's Award, really, because of all of the stuff that we did carry on doing all through lockdown, which, many people have kindly said was much appreciated and it kind of kept people going through that dark period. But, whenever Ali and I talk about it now, I think we look back and it's sort of like a traumatic period for us, really, because live music is what we're passionate about. That's where it's at. We love the buzz of being involved with a group of people in the same room together. We love seeing the smiles on our audience's faces once we're done. And we were denied all of that. We did the best we could, but thank the Lord, things have changed since that dark period.
Yeah, I bet I've watched some of your videos 8 or 10 times. They're just really entertaining. I think my favorite is the Queen song, "Don't Stop Me Now." That's one of
Right.
my favorite, and which is the one where the guy does the backflip into the hot tub at the end of it.
Yes,
That was pretty good.
that was one of them, wasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we I mean, we tried to just make it as fun and exciting as possible. I mean, Cory Band is mainly known for its quality of performance. I mean, there was no way we could achieve that with people playing in different rooms to each other. We mainly achieve what we do achieve because we've got brilliant musicians in the band, and everyone knows that to be a brilliant musician, you've got to be a great listener and you've got to adapt to what other people are doing around you. And the players, any players from any band that were involved in these on loan videos, they were just robbed of the ability to hear anything else going on. And so the quality wasn't great, but the sense of fun and the excitement and all that, we tried to keep that as high as possible.
Yeah. One thing in your live performance that I noticed, that I don't know if all brass bands do this, but it's quite visual. You guys do a lot of things where people will stand up or come to the front, or just kind of move around a bit. It's almost like a little bit of a marching band thing.
Yeah.
Is that common across all brass bands?
No, not really. But I mean, I'm interested really in the kind of human experience of music making, both in terms of the players that we have on stage, but also in terms of the audiences that we play to. And I've been an audience member in plenty of concerts, and sort of created a bank in my head of things that I know really kind of move me as an audience member. And I think playing top quality music is the big priority for us. But we definitely have developed, certainly over my time with the band, these kind of extra musical elements, which are what you're referring to, I think, when you talk about, maybe a little bit of choreography, maybe use of a spatial element. So putting people in different places in any hall that we turn up to do. Moving the band to a different formation and doing that in the different formation, just to provide a real variety of experience for our audiences. Really, it's quite unnerving if you come and you're a deputy in the Cory Band, because we'll send you the music beforehand, but until you get there, you don't realize you've got to stand up here, sit down there, learn this from memory, move around here, blah blah blah. So yeah, I'm told it can be a little bit more of a scary experience, but yeah, that's what we try and do, and it's all because I like to give as engaging a performance to an audience as possible, so that they'll become an advocate for brass bands, and they'll tell their friends, and they'll come back to our concerts, and we'll just build up a bit of a buzz, really.
Yeah. I love the color too, with your uniforms. I know somehow in the U.S. it seems like all bands have just taken to wearing all black all the time for everything, and it's just so boring. And you guys have those really neat red and gold uniforms. I really love that.
Yeah, beautiful red and gold uniforms, and again is another, that kind of military sort of aspect, or some might say kind of circus aspect. We call them the lion tamers jackets, but a lot of different bands have different colors. So yes, as well as the sound, going to a brass band contest, for example, where there's lots of different bands, is also a sight for sore eyes as well, with the different bright colors coming onto the stage one after the other. Yeah, but we wear red and gold, which is recognizably Cory, I think, in the brass band world.
Okay. So does the band, you guys own your own facility for rehearsal and music equipment storage and all that?
We do now, yeah, and that was one of the long-term objectives for the band, really. And this is kind of one little silver lining of the COVID period, was that we actually purchased our band room. I'm going to say just a few months before COVID hit. I think that's an accurate statement. I mean, having said I've been with the band 10 years now, I mean, this is my third rehearsal room that I've been in with the band over 10 years, just sort of show you the sort of nomadic existence that the band had kind of lived up until this moment, when, yeah, we were in a position to be able to buy our own facility. It's a Victorian chapel, so it's not a purpose-built band room, but it needed a lot of stuff doing to it. And as it happened, it was during the year 18 months that we weren't allowed to get together to rehearse anyway. So that kind of fell into place. We had the builders in our facility for those 12 to 18 months. And once we were out of the COVID period, we had this lovely, brand new, newly converted space to come to. So yeah, that's where we are now, back in Tonpentra. You'll remember I said the original name of the band was the Ton Temperance Band. Well, we're back in Ton now, right back where the band belongs. And we've got this converted chapel, which is excellent, a really excellent facility.
And I think I saw online not too long ago, you guys got like all new instruments from Besson. Was that correct?
Yeah, well, we've got we've no kind of headline sponsor just at the moment, like the band has had in the past.
Okay.
But we do have quite a few really important and valuable partnerships. Probably one of the biggest, then the most important, is with Besson Musical Instruments. And the band has had this partnership with Besson for quite a while now, probably 15, going on 20 years, I would have thought. Yeah, the deal is basically we advocate for their musical instruments and we endorse their musical instruments, which are excellent. And every 3, 4, 5 years, they give us a new set of instruments with all the latest technological developments on them. And yeah, everywhere we go on the concert platform, we play those instruments. And you know, it's a big part of what the Cory Band sound is. But over and above the instruments, the partnership we have with Besson is kind of multi-level, really. So, you know, we're often appearing at events at their request, and they have plenty of Besson endorsee soloists within the band as well. It's a really important partnership. But yeah, I mean, pulling the cellophane off a brand new instrument that's just come out of the lorry, and you know, giving it its first blow is exciting. Or when you've got everyone or virtually everyone in the room doing that at the same time, that's definitely an exciting rehearsal.
Wow, so they actually give you all those instruments?
Yeah,
wow,
they do.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, they lend us the instruments, I should
Okay.
say. I mean, as part of the new instruments coming in, we gave the old instruments back to them.
Okay, except for trombones, obviously.
Yeah, we don't. There's a few instruments that are excluded from that. Trombones and Glyn on euphonium doesn't play Besson either. But the cornets, the tenor horns, the baritones, the tubas. So we're talking probably 90% or maybe 85% of the band are all proudly playing Besson musical instruments.
And all your trombone players are, I know at least two of them I've seen are on Wrath.
Yeah.
Okay. I actually play a Wrath trombone myself.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah. We've got an agreement with Wrath as well. So Wrath provide our trombones for us, and well, you've heard our trombone section. We think they're pretty good.
Oh yeah, I had a chance to meet Mick Wrath a few years ago at the trombone event here, and emailed him back and forth a few times. He's always been very helpful. About how many concerts do you guys do a year?
We do about 20 or 25, something like that. We always try and balance the diary wherever we can. Obviously, you know, we're talking about people that are giving up their weekends to do these concerts. So, you know, we have to do the concerts to earn the money that we need to run the band. But about that kind of number, a lot of them in the UK, some of them overseas. So since COVID, you mentioned the Korean tour. We did a concert in Austria as well last year, and we were in France as well. We've got Sweden and Switzerland a couple of times, and France again in the diary for this year. So we go overseas as well. Plus, of course, as you'll know, we've been to the USA twice on more kind of longer haul tours. Once in 2016, once again in 2019. And so, yeah, we'd hope to be back there again soon. But that's the kind of diary commitment we have in terms of concerts.
Did you guys bring all your own percussion equipment and everything with you on that trip, or did you?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we brought the tubas, which were you know, a bit of a logistical exercise, but no, the percussion has to be provided. I can't imagine Ali sitting on the plane with a timpani on the seat next to him. That's just not going to work.
Yeah. Well, I asked that same question. I got a friend that plays in the Pittsburgh Symphony, and he said they take all their percussion equipment and everything with them when they do their European tours.
Yeah.
So that would be quite a
And again, I think that's the difference between a group that's organized as a professional outfit and everything's paid for and all above board. And, that's one thing. Our band won't have the same turnover as a professional orchestra. But then again, we'll have things like that we'd like to, organize the percussion where we're going. But then everyone is there because they're volunteering their time and they're not there because they're paid and all the rest of it. So yeah, I guess that's another example of the difference between a group that's organized professionally and a British brass band, which is a kind of a member organization for people who come and do their hobby.
Do people tend to stay in the band for really long periods of time, or do people occasionally get burned out and or do something else?
Yeah. I mean, people do leave the band. I mean, I think as I've described to you, it's quite an intense thing to do, and some people that have other pressures in their life feel that they can only do it for a short space of time, a year or 2 years or 3 years or whatever. But having said that, there's quite a few people in the band at the moment who were there when I first came along and were there for several years before I even came along as well. So well into double figures. I think if it's something you do and you love doing it, then relinquishing a place in Cory Band is something that you think hard about before you do it. Really, you'd hold on to it.
I imagine there's a lot of competition when you have an open chair.
Well, yeah. I mean, there is, and there isn't. I mean, a seat in Cory Band is definitely a coveted thing. So some people, if they're focused on it, and if there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different people like that for each seat, then it is competitive. But on the other hand, where the band is in South Wales, I'm sure your listeners will know that the UK is kind of divided into 4 countries, really. England being the biggest country, and then we have Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland as well, who are separate countries in their own right. Wales is a much smaller country than England. And Cardiff is the capital city of Wales, but Cory Band is still kind of many miles from Cardiff. So where we are geographically, there actually aren't many people.
Oh, okay.
We occasionally have to cast the net a lot wider to find people of the quality we want to bring into the band. For example, Glyn and Helen Williams are always a great example. Fantastic musicians who were well established with the Fodens Band, who are located up near Manchester, one of the big cities in England. We enticed them to come to Cory Band, and they moved everything. They moved their whole lives, the house, their job, everything. They moved down to South Wales, and so that's an example of where it's. There aren't players just kind of growing on trees in South Wales. So yes and no is the answer to that question.
Philip, thank you so much for taking your time to be with me today. It was really interesting, and love the band, and I look forward to hopefully seeing you in the US again. And if not, keep watching your videos and hope everything goes well.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me. And although it's a bit of a foreign world for our US listeners, we know there's nothing quite like the British brass band over there. I hope it's been useful to hear me kind of lifting the lid a little bit on it. And like you just said, I mean, I would advise anyone to have a look at our YouTube channel and dive in and see the sort of thing that we do.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Okay, thanks.